This is the Simpit. I'm your host, Shaun Cole, and welcome to today's edition of the Pitstop, where you, the pit crew, you are the real star of today's show. And with me today, our special guest host on Fridays is our very own Billy Strange. How you doing, Billy?
Good. How are you?
I am pumped up. It's Friday. I love Fridays. I love every day, but Fridays.
I was gonna say, is there a day you don't love, Shaun?
I do sometimes have trouble on Mondays, but
Okay.
barely. But Fridays are the day that I love because it seems like everyone I come across on a Friday is in a good mood. Like when you're out and about in the world, Friday's the day that everybody just seems ready to party, have a good time, and yeah, I enjoy that about Fridays, and it's even different than the weekend when we're already into it. Today's the anticipation day. So anyway, I love Fridays. So what have you been up to this week? What have you been racing, driving, playing with? What's been going on in your life?
Just a lot of different stuff. Start off with we've been practicing for Daytona, so done some driving. Actually, I did a lot of driving over the weekend with the prototype and iRacing. And then I'm still working on a V Rally 4 review, so I put like 10, 12 hours into that early this week, and then decided that I'm not going to get that done by the week's end. So then I was like, well, I need to put out at least one video this week. And I don't know if you've ever done this, but this week I've had 4 failed attempts at a video. I've recorded it and I've started editing it, and I'm just like, I don't even like watching this. Why the hell is anybody else going to watch this? So literally like Tuesday and Wednesday were all just aborted takes of videos. I was so frustrated.
I feel so bad for you. I totally know what you mean, and I don't think that's I think that's something that people who watch various different sim racing shows don't realize is the amount, they used to call it the cutting room floor, in the movie industry, but it was like I don't think people realize how many hours of work is for nothing in the end. And it's like, wow, I just wasted half a day, and I'm going to take the whole thing and throw it in the garbage can. Like, just every bit of it. Yeah.
It's so hard not to do, but I'm like, you know what? This will be cool. I drive it. I talk, or I do some post commentating or voiceover or whatever. And as I'm editing it, I'm like, this just isn't doing it for me. Like, I'm not excited to put this out. There's nothing interesting here. And so then I just scrap it all. I was just like, no. So what I ended up doing was I'm still editing it, but I decided to circle back around to Project Cars 2 since we had kind of been talking about it last week, and I had started my career in that. And then, it kind of views it, and this is not unusual for a series. If you're not familiar with YouTube, if you try to do a series, the viewership tends to fall off as you go.
Sure. And
it kind of fell off, and I was like, well, not nobody, but there's a lot of people that don't care. And then people would ask me about it every once in a while, so I revived it. The community had picked the last time I had run a series, or in Project Cars 2, I had to pick a new series to run, and they picked the Clio Cup for me to run as my next series. And the first race is at Brands Hatch Indy, and boy, that thing is a pain in the rear to try to get around Brands Hatch Indy. The back end just constantly tries to step out. So anyway, I'm working on that, and I think that's it.
Cool. Tom Jones is saying, don't throw away bad videos. Just title them, "This is total garbage," and see how many hits they get.
No. No. Because something that I would put, I've done that before where I'm just like, I get done with it, and I'm like, well, maybe it's just me. And I put it out, and then it's like, either A, it doesn't get watched, or B, people are like, why did you do this? I agree. I tend to not, if I'm not into it, like, I could have forced myself. There was a couple times that I was driving the car, and I'm like, this is cool, but it's just not exciting. Or on the opposite end, I don't like to do hot laps with a car. I usually at least like to run with AI. Just, to me, it makes a more interesting video.
Sure.
And sometimes the AI, sometimes the AI just loses their mind. And while it's hilarious, at the same point, it's kind of like, I'm inviting people to just start not paying attention to the thing that I'm talking about, and rather just pay attention to what stupid things the AI are doing. I'm like,
look at that.
that's yeah, and it's funny, but I'm not making a funny video, so I scrapped that, and yeah, it just wasn't working for me. I had literally almost 3 days of just wasted.
Oh.
Just wasted time.
No, okay, so we aren't even getting to the news yet, but I can't let this go because we've both been doing this a long time. Don't you feel good, though? Because how bad do you feel when you put something up that you're not super happy with? And, occasionally I put up a video, and maybe it's not anything to do with anything that anybody else would notice. It's all about me. But when I'm not happy, it's so much worse than that, because it's like I'm mortified is more like the wording when I'm looking at content of mine that I don't like or I'm not proud of.
Yeah. It's hard not to be critical of yourself to begin with, and then when you get beyond that point, you're just like, I got to put out something, and then that thing that you put out, you're just like, I am not super happy with this. I don't know. I used to do that. I used to be like, okay, I have to do this, I have to do this, and I have to do this, and I got to the point where I think I started to sound cranky in a couple videos. I was like, you start ragging on something, and that's what I don't want to do. I don't want to sit there and just make a bunch of videos that are just tearing things down and apart. So I'm just like, it's better I just stay away from this.
I totally understand. Well, I think,
what about you?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think I've pretty much been in the same boat as you. It's been all about Daytona. There's really nothing on my plate racing-wise more than preparing for the 24 hours at Daytona. And part of it is because I love endurance racing. Part of it's because we have the Simpit team going at it. And part of it is because this is kind of the kickoff of the season for the endurance schedule. So this is a big deal, and I've been putting a lot of time and effort, been working with a lot of various drivers, kind of helping out. And a lot of that, I did get a review out of that handbrake sequential shifter this week, so I was pretty happy with that.
Yes, I watched that.
Content I was happy with, by the way.
Yes, it was good. It was a good review.
Thank you. And now I'm working on something, so it's sort of funny. We're never going to get to the news today. Talking about content, I am filming a preview, I want to call it, of the game Wrench. Like, I played it for
cool.
Just playing with the guys so that the patron team could watch me play some VR. And I never really thought of it as something that I'd put on the show because we're about racing. But it is such a sim racing, so to speak, type game, just without the racing aspect of it. So, but because it's a preview, because it's something different, and because it's VR, I wanted to try something different in the way I'm filming it. But I haven't taken it all to the editing bay yet, and there is a really good chance that I might have as much as 2 days of completely wasted filming.
Oh yeah.
And for something that wasn't even going to be on the show. It was just sort of like, but they did a big update over the holidays that I had missed, and it fixed like a couple things that I little pet peeve issues I had, and now it's like, oh well, if they fix that, now we're talking. So that's what I've been working on. It's been a fun week, and it's been a good beginning to 2019, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely. I almost wanted to do a video about things I'm looking forward to, and I decided that maybe I shouldn't just yet. Maybe I should get some of this other stuff, because we'll talk about it later. There's some other stuff that is coming up that I'm like, I need to make room to go over other things. So anyway,
yeah. Should we get to the news?
I was going to say we can get to the news part of it now that people are probably wanting to hear.
That's enough conversation with Shaun and Billy about Shaun and Billy. All right, let's start things off with Codemasters today. They have a couple of things. Dirt Rally 2. Obviously, this is the most anticipated thing from Codemasters so far for the year. They have another dev video, we'll call it. This is Chief Game Designer Ross Gowing taking you through the challenges ahead, talking about some of the single-player campaign. And, we could have a whole conversation on single-player campaign someday. It's something I have a lot of thoughts on and a lot of opinion on. In addition to that, this is one I'm always telling people about various jobs in the sim racing world. Because if you're a sim racer, what do they say? If you love your work, you never work a day in your life, something like that, something along those lines. Not entirely true, by the way, but you have less.
It's the idea.
It's the idea. You have less bad days, that's for sure. So I'm always saying, if you're a sim racer and you're into it, you go to work and you hate your job, wouldn't you rather work in the sim racing industry? Anyway, Codemasters, they are recruiting for a social media manager, and this one I'm excited about because this isn't for programming. I mean, not all of us have programming or engineering skills, but we all, if you're here watching this show, I guarantee you have social media skills or you wouldn't have found us. So this is the type of job that anyone and everybody could do if you're looking for and you live in the UK. I'm not sure if you need to be in the UK. Social media is an online thing. I mean, theoretically, you could do it from anywhere in the world. But anyway, the cool job if somebody's looking for a job and want to work.
They do say that they want you. They do say they want you in the UK at their office. So.
That would probably help. It makes meetings easier.
And I watched that video that I believe her name's Christina. She talked to Ross about the career mode and talked about how the structure of it's going to be. And it's kind of your same standard affair. You're going to have different disciplines, obviously. And then there's going to be a ladder system that you're going to need certain cars to get into all the way to the upper tier of whatever discipline you're in. But the one thing he kind of mentions that they don't go into super big detail about, but he does talk about how at the end of a stage, like they want you to be responsible for the whole run. In other words, if you get damaged, just, like in other rally titles and before, you've obviously got to fix it in between stages if you can. The one thing he mentioned is that from the end of the stage to the marshal station, usually you have an area that you have to stop in. If you crash in between there, you will still get damage.
Oh, awesome.
So you will get damage. I imagine that's probably a thing you can turn on and off, but you will get damage in between there. So you still have to be careful all the way up to the point that you have to stop. So I just thought that was kind of an interesting little tidbit that they put in there.
Absolutely. Okay, let's go ahead and go down this path a little bit, single player. I mean, we can make this a topic in its own, but when I think of a game like Dirt Rally, it's kind of hard to incorporate rally into online racing. I mean, ultimately, it could be a leaderboard would be just as effective as a multiplayer rally race. I mean, we used to do the Richard Burns rally multiplayer, and it's cool to all start the stage and then wait and see the results come in. But it's so different because you're not on the track at the same time, and to me, that does make single-player mode just a little more important in a rally type game, especially.
I don't know if you ever tried this, but Rally Sport Challenge 2 for the Xbox, they put you all on the line at the same time and you ghost.
Oh.
And you see the other guy's ghosts, and I tell you what, that ratchets up the intensity because you can watch the other guy pulling away from you, and then he makes a mistake, like he hits a tree or he crashes and spins out or rolls over. That was actually pretty cool.
What game is this?
It was called Rally Sport Challenge 2. It was one of my, it is on the arcadey side, but it was more difficult than a lot of racing games at that time. And I really liked that game because you could blow out headlights, and if you were running at night, like in the UK through the forest, you couldn't see anything.
Awesome.
It was a great game, and it was done by DICE, the guys that do Battlefield and all that. That was done by DICE. And anyway, when you did online, they had like the hill climbs and the Pikes Peaks cars, and then they had Rallycross in that game as well. But when you did the regular rally, if I remember right, I'm pretty sure you all started at the same time. And when you left, as a ghost normally does, it gets so far ahead and then you can see the ghost. That's what would happen, except it would be the other players that were running at the same time. And it made it much more intense you could literally see what you were losing.
Oh, I love it.
If somebody was, in the mirror, if somebody was on you. So it was kind of a cool idea.
We might have to do that for a Monday Fun Day, like on the Xbox. Literally, totally not our norm, but that sounds fun. That sounds totally fun. Well, that's cool. That's all cool and exciting about Dirt Rally 2. I am looking forward to Dirt Rally 2, for sure. I mean, I don't think... excuse me. I don't think Codemasters has ever let me down on the dirt side of things. I mean, there are versions that I've been happier with and versions that I've been less happy with. And there have been some flaws that were never even corrected. But all in all, I've been happy with the dirt side of things from Codemasters.
I would say Dirt 4 was not I didn't care for it too much. I've played every dirt game from Codemasters. Showdown, I think that's what it was called. I don't really consider, we'll say, canon to the Dirt franchise. But Dirt 4 just missed the mark for me. Like, it wasn't full blown like Dirt. Like, I really love Dirt 2, but that's because it was arcade style stuff. And
I love the original Dirt because it kind of
Dirt was a little more brutal.
First Dirt, and it just was like for what I had in the sim racing world up until then, outside of like a Richard Burns Rally, which was like almost a cult level game more than like a prime time game, in my opinion. At least on the high end version of it, when you got into RBR and all that stuff. But I can never remember the name of the giant mod. RSRBR.
RSRBR.
Yeah. But when Dirt happened, we kind of had all of these, road racing sims, blah blah, and then Dirt. And it was like, right. Oh, wow. And it blew my mind to an extent.
It had the trucks in it. And yeah it was fun.
And it was brutal. It was brutal in like almost a Wreckfest type brutal way.
Yeah, it was still arcadey, but it did have some brutality to it.
All right, moving on. You want to take us through Assetto Corsa?
Yeah, just Assetto decided to announce that, and I mean, everybody knew it if you were following their roadmap, but on Twitter, they launched some screenshots of Zolder. And if you're not familiar with Zolder, it's a fairly short circuit, but it's got a nice flow to it. Too bad they had some of those like little chicane-looking slowdown areas, but I like that track a lot. It has a good flow to it. And yeah, so you can look forward to that. What is it, next week? It's the 16th.
Yeah.
I think is when they're releasing the next update, right?
Yeah, and this is probably one we should mention and let people really know. You got to know. No. On the 16th is release 5, which means basically if you wait till the 16th, it jumps up to $45.
That's right.
So if you were like, okay, before the show, you're like, well, the Jaguar. So with it comes Zolder and the Jaguar. Some new features like multiplayer enhanced, and the rating system is getting a fine tuning. But you talked about the Jag, and you're like, oh, that might be the one, right?
Yeah, I might have to pull the trigger. I like the Jag a lot, and I'm like, is there enough there that I want to go ahead and purchase the content? No, my dog's making noises back here. What the hell?
Well, you only have 4 days to do it for $10 cheaper.
I know. It's probably going to be down to the last second. I'm going to be like, I'll buy it now.
I'm going to have to put a clock up with a ticker.
There you go.
$10. I'm going to call it the $10 ticker. That's basically what it will be. That's cool. That's, at this point, and it's kind of hard, and this is, this rollout, we could do a whole show on the rollout and my thoughts, your thoughts on that. But, release 5. So now there's almost enough game to do something with, 5 cars, 5 tracks, a few more rules,
right,
and things going on. Whereas, honestly, for the first 3 releases, I was just kind of like, oh, yeah, it was the yawn fest.
Well,
rollout.
And that's why I stayed. Yeah, that's why I stayed away from it. If it was more like Kartcraft, where it was, handful of tracks on release and 2 or 3 cars for $20, I probably would have picked it up, no problem. But it's not the case. And I realize it's gone up in price, and you can make the argument that, buy it early and then just wait. But I wanted to see what they were doing. And so that's why I'm still kind of on the fence, because I don't know if I've seen enough to still make me want to press that button.
Well, and there's only 2 steps to go.
I know.
After that one, at least.
That's the problem, right? Is that I'm kind of sitting here going, okay, like, are we going to get the full schedule? Are we going to get all of it? Or, like, what's going to happen at the end?
The big question for me at the end is going to come down to multiplayer and ease of racing. So, I mean, like, on the full game, when you look at the description, they talk about a complete rating system and matchmaking system. Matchmaking system, to me, that means so many different things, and the depth and what they really provide on that, it could be the maker or breaker for that sim for me, at least. I don't know about everybody else out there. The other is, I wonder how long it's going to take from, they say it's going to be the full game available in Q1 2019, and I wonder how long is it going to take from the full game, and we might even hear about it before the release of the full game, but I am just waiting for the drop of the announcement of the gigantic ESport competition affiliated with Blockchain and all the details and all the qualifying, and I'm just wondering how quick. Racing season is now. Racing season starts this month. For most racing series in the world, or next month actually, but we're right into that beginning of the real life season of things, which means Blockchain's going to kick things off and get going. I would imagine they want to capture that early season enthusiasm if they can. Right. But will they be able to deliver in time to do that, or is it going to be one of those things where the game rolls out, the eSport announcement, and then before the thing even kicks off, we're already seeing massive changes because something isn't how they thought it would be? Anyway, I'm very long-winded today, I notice. All right, next topic.
Okay. That's what this show is for.
I'm going to announce it, but I want to hear your words and thoughts on it because this is really something that you have had more... Oh, I see your dog. Look at the dog.
Oh, hey, what are you doing? Come here.
Oh, hi. I'm such a dog guy. Look at the German Shepherd. All right, so... we talked about R Factor 2 and the
She's bored.
GT competition. My dog's sleeping right there, just doesn't even care. The GT Challengers pack and the lack of the Aston Martin Vantage. Beautiful car, one of my favorite cars in the real life world. You held out because it didn't have the Aston Martin.
Yeah. And
now it's here. The Aston Martin has been added to the pack, which, you can buy the cars all individually, or you can buy that whole Challengers pack, right?
Yes, that's correct.
And so here we have some screenshots. I haven't played it in-game, and some screenshots of the actual in-car game. And you have any feelings or thoughts on this one? You've been holding out. You were waiting on this car?
Okay. So, I haven't gotten to drive it yet, because it just came out yesterday, I believe. So I've gotten to drive all the other cars in the pack. This is the car I really wanted to drive. So after I get done with editing the video that I'm doing, I'm jumping right into this. I'm going to drive the car and then start working on a review for the pack of cars. My only, in looking at the screenshots for this car, right? The way that it comes across is a bit cartoonish, and I think it's just the style of the picture. Like the one from the back end of the car at Sebring, that one looks fine, but there's another post below it. I don't know. I guess my slight irritation with this, and it's the same way with the Audi in the game. Why is there no race liveries?
Right.
Why is this a thing where we release these generic looking prototype-esque test car? That's what I'm looking for. Test car livery instead of an actual race livery. So, for those of us that don't paint cars, I don't like seeing stuff like this when I'm on the track racing with other cars. And the Audi is the same way. There's no number template on the car. It just, for me, it's a little deal that's a big deal, if that makes sense. So I'm a little disappointed in how this car comes across, but I'm sure I'm hoping the car will drive fine. I haven't driven it yet.
When you said the word cartoony, I was kind of sitting here searching for my word for how I would have defined how I think it overall looks. And it's one shot in particular, by the way, looking through them. Like you said, that rear end shot at Sebring looks fantastic, but I'm looking at this head-on shot where the lights are on, and I'm sure part of it is the screenshot moment, but it just looks so dated. It looks simple.
It almost looks phony, like somebody drew it.
Yes.
Like it's a really weird promo shot to me. So I don't know. I don't think, But
liveries would go a long way.
Well, I mean, if you don't have the car ready, don't release it.
Right.
I mean, that's what would my argument to be with just drive. I mean, part of this is the looks of the car. I mean, that's what gets us excited. It's like a 50-50 thing for me. It's how it looks and how it drives.
Right.
You know, if the car looks ugly, then it's kind of like, I mean, that's what's supposed to make me want to buy the car, right?
Right. And these photos
It's the
might
thing
not
that you
do
see
that.
on the outside.
Yeah. Well,
And so, it's the argument that the license takes time and all that. That you already had to do the licensing for this car,
sure.
for the car itself.
Sure.
All
Well,
those companies work in conjunction with each other.
yeah. They're
Even come
all
up with a
Aston
fake
Martin
livery
teams.
that looks like a race livery. How
I was
about
just
that?
going to say, and there are so many good community painters that if you're the likes of a sim, headquarters, I can't imagine it's that hard to get some community painters willing to do 10 paint schemes for you, get credits in the game and nothing else, and be thrilled to do it for you. You know what I mean? And it wouldn't be that hard. And like you said, they don't even have to be real paint jobs, so you can skip any licensing. It could all be faux paint jobs. It could be
Right.
mockery.
I mean, it's the same issue that I have with Automobilista and some of their paint, their skins that they come out with. They're not good.
Sure. So, and if it means also if you go to race in this series, it's like you're going to see,
Yeah, you see the other cars on the track.
6 or 8 of the same liveried Aston Martin too.
Yeah. I mean, if you're doing a race, like I really enjoyed the cars in this pack so far. So I'm assuming this one won't be too different. At least I hope it's not. So when you're sitting on the grid and you see all these cars on the grid and then you see 2 or 3 cars on the grid or when you're passing them on the track, I mean, yeah, you may not be seeing the car when you're driving it, but if there's another Aston Martin on the track while I'm driving, I still see it. I mean, in real life, when I was racing cars and other, I noticed what the other cars look like, and you want to know why, it's because you want to know who you're racing against.
Right.
It's a key for when you're driving IRL or like online, you pay attention to the livery or the paint job on the car because that signifies who that is on the track, and you know that I can race them clean.
Right.
I need to give them more room. That's why you
Sure.
end up paying attention to this stuff.
Sure.
So it does matter.
It does. It's very important, actually. That's a great point. Great point. All right, cool. What else we have today?
Let's see. We got Race Room. We got their competition. Did we figure out how to say this yet?
No.
Avia? I think somebody said it and now I don't remember. But anyway, they have it says tomorrow is the first race of their, I'm going to say, Avia e-racing competition, live streamed on Facebook and YouTube at 20 Central. Is that CET? Sorry.
Yeah,
I said Central,
so.
but it's CET. Which looks like it's utilizing the BMW M6. So that's just something for people to keep on their radar if they're into esports.
I'm looking at some of these names. Huge names in this one. Some that you'd expect. I mean, guys like Jack Keatley, who is like a race room superstar. Julian Kuntz. I mean, is this our start list? Benzi Bonky is in there.
Yep.
That guy is huge. Florian Haas, Yaroslav Honzik. Who else we've got? Renee Kirchhoff. Hey, my teammate Renee Kirchhoff. I've run some endurance races with Renee. A lot of big names. This is going to be a huge event, obviously. Probably make some good entertainment.
Well, I like that they split it into pro and rookie too. I think that gives somebody that may be new or maybe doesn't quite have the laps that these other guys do, it still gives them a chance to run with people of like skill level, which is nice.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm also noticing we've got Giorgio Mangano from Williams ESport team. So that's one of the again, that F1 2018 kind of created an interesting moment when you had these real teams being formed. Oh, I see we just got a donation. Look at that. Oh, look what I have at the ready. You guys
Uh-oh, what do you have? Show us.
It played accidentally earlier today. Who did that come to us from?
Rachel Williams?
Rachel Williams. Right? Thank you. Yeah, Rachel Williams. Thank you very much,
Thank
Rachel.
you very much. That's very nice of you.
I also see a couple ACR Zaxby drivers in there, Richard Schaefer and Adam Pinces. So, but yeah, as I was saying, that Williams, that's some of these teams are going to have legs that go well beyond the F1 2018 competition. And some of them, like you look at Brendan going to the E-Rock, but I don't think he's going as the F1 team versus the guys who were part of the Williams team seem to have become part of the Williams ESport team. So some of those F1 teams have become permanent ESport teams versus some it was like it's only for the F1 competition.
And in the rookie class, it looks like Abgefahren, which is if it's the same person, and I don't know that person's name to know if Abgefahren is this person. I'm gonna butcher that name. Giannis. Anyway, they raced in that thing we did with Race Room.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they were in there. So that's cool.
So Race Room ringers essentially.
Yeah, it's good to see somebody like that in there. That's always cool.
Absolutely. Okay, cool. So that's going on. Again, you can watch that on Twitch at 20CEST, and that's tomorrow, which is today.
Today. Which is now. Wait, what?
That happened 5 minutes ago. Sorry. No, I don't know what 20CEST is, to be honest with you. All right, and then the last just general news story of the day. This is just sort of, the game, the Grand Tour. Amazon was actually the producer of this game. But it turns out they dropped the price already. So with it coming out on Tuesday, the 15th, we are a week away 4 days away from it coming out. It just got cheaper. So that is, I guess, good news.
Well, I didn't realize when we were talking about this beforehand. This is 12 pounds, originally priced at 24 pounds.
That's a pretty big drop.
So $30 US down to $15 US. That's like half. I thought it was just a small discount because I wasn't paying attention. I saw $14.99 versus $11.99, and I was like, yeah, this isn't uncommon for indie developers to do on like Steam when they get a new game that comes out. They'll slash it a little bit just to get an initial rush going in, and then they'll actually go back to their standard price. That's a significant discount. So it makes you wonder, like, was it always worth $12?
That's a great question.
or what?
Yeah, is this just
bizarre?
Our sales were so terrible that we have to drop the price, or was it like just a little fishing expedition? Will people be willing to pay $30?
It's all a conspiracy. Illuminati confirmed.
Conspiracy. There you go.
That's right. Anyway, I thought that was interesting that the price. Not that I'm going to really play this, but I just thought it was interesting. It's something automotive related, and that price cut is fairly steep. So,
now, were you planning on buying it at that original price?
Hell no.
Are you planning on buying it at the new price?
Hell no. Sorry, was that too straightforward?
No, but I'm with you. I don't think you're going to see the Grand Tour game on the Simpit or on Billy Strange Racing.
Not unless for some reason they want to send me a copy, and that probably won't go well. So that probably is not going to happen.
Not going to happen. It's not going to. All of a sudden, the price will be down to $6.99 after Billy's review.
Oh yes.
So that is going to do it for the news, and that kind of just takes us to a chance where you and I get to talk about something, and something that both of us talked about in the beginning of What Are We Doing? Both 2 weeks in a row now, both of us talked about what have we been doing, and it was preparation for an endurance race. Preparation for a big race, an important race, something you have passion and really want to do well in. And both of us have been doing some work with some drivers who are just looking for more speed at Daytona. And so it kind of made me think about not just me, not just you, not just rookies, but what are the things that we can do or should be doing to find speed? And sometimes it's working with others. Sometimes it's working on your own most of the time in sim racing. But what are the things? I mean, even whether you've been sim racing for a month or you've been sim racing for 20 years, it doesn't change that there are things you can still do to find more time. Even if you're an old dog, there are new tricks to be learned, but what do you do? I mean, so I turn to you first,
Right.
sure. And, I have a couple things that I like to do or that I recommend to people that they do when searching for speed at a new track or somewhere they're just trying to get faster at. And so anyway, what about you? What's your approach to finding speed?
I think we covered it a little bit before, but I'm letting people know that if they have questions, they can ask us here, because we'll do Q&A after this. But my first thing, I will talk about helping somebody last week, and one of the biggest things that I talk about is knowing your equipment and knowing the sim. Before you start turning laps, there are adjustments that are there for a reason. And so finding out this particular sim we were doing was iRacing. And so making sure, one of the things that people like to do, which if you think about it, most people that I've ever come in contact with don't do well with just changing things on the fly. As far as degrees of rotation, the car geometry was set up in a certain way that it works well with, in my experience, I'm usually better with the correct degrees of rotation. So just understanding, that's just an example. Another example would be understanding if it has a brake sensitivity adjustment in it. Understanding that if you're locking up the brakes, use a car that doesn't use ABS. If it's locking up the brakes, play with that slider until you get your threshold braking where you want it. Those sliders are there for a reason. So my biggest thing is understanding your equipment, understanding the sim that you're driving in. Before anything else, make sure you understand those components, and then you can go out on track and start finding speed.
And I think it's also being comfortable with, so, having it set up right, and part of that being that you're gelling with it as well, with the way you've dialed everything in.
I equate it to when I used to race RC cars. You get a faux sense of what the car is doing, right? You can almost feel what the car is doing. And you want that same type of thing to happen when you're doing sim racing. You want that faux sense of like, I feel like I'm a part of the car. And if you're not setting yourself up from the beginning to help facilitate that, then everything else behind it is going to suffer. It doesn't matter the setup you have. It doesn't matter the lines you drive, nothing. If you're not getting that initial part set up the way you need, I'm not going to say correctly, but the way you need it to be set up, then none of that other stuff matters, because you're always going to be at a disadvantage.
Sure. That makes total sense.
Even if you're running quick, you could be better if you set up your stuff more for you in the beginning. And I think that's the biggest thing when I really started understanding sim racing is I get a new title, I go and I understand what that sim is asking from me as far as options are.
Right.
And then from there you go in and you start finding speed, and you can talk about actually finding the actual speed on the track itself.
I mean, for me, it's all in this conversation here. For me, it's all about all of it, because we're doing something a little abnormal in that we're preparing over the course of weeks for one race, which is maybe putting a lot more time and laps in, but it's also looking for a level of perfection that you might not look for in a weekly raced scenario. So I think that it's important, especially now for me, I'd say it's always equally important for any race, but this is one of those ones that points out things that you might not get to, might not think of when doing weekly race. And I think it comes down to everything you can throw at it. This is that chance, especially right now for us with it being preseason even. This is kind of setting the terms for the rest of the season almost, if you look at it from a real race team perspective. And I think that what you said is really important. It's also one area, there are a few areas where sim racing is actually more difficult than real life racing. And one of them is that everything you just said right there is something that kind of, for the most part, you don't deal with in real life. Sure, you have brake bias adjustments and power and things, but you're working on the car more than the steering wheel itself or the pedals themselves for the most part.
I don't know, because I know drivers are more sensitive to certain things. So, for instance, I was very sensitive to the brake in a car. And I was also very sensitive to how fast the steering was in a car.
Right.
And so if that wasn't how I wanted it, I wouldn't get the most out of the car that I could, because I then am trying to wrap my head around the same thing. What is the car telling me while I'm driving? Now, when it came to my seat, there is a difference between a standard seat and then a seat you feel like you're a part of. So I had a Kirky seat to begin with, and then I went with this carbon Kevlar Race Tech seat, and it was like night and day. I felt, once I got that Race Tech seat, I was a part of the car.
Sure.
And it changed everything for me.
Same thing with gloves. I experienced the same thing in go-karting, by the way, with the seat change. And it was like, wow, I am now part of the car versus, part of the cart versus I was on the cart before.
So in that aspect, like, I would take time, like in the sprint car, you sit upright. And so my foot, a lot of people would mount their throttle pedal straight forward. And you could either do one that was hung from the rails, the chassis, and it swung, or you could get one that's mounted to the floor, or your floorboard, and then there was a rod that goes on this little lever, goes through the firewall, goes to where goes to the engine. And because we don't run carburetors in the sprint cars, it's all mechanical fuel injection. But what would operate the butterflies? And anyway, my natural tendency was my foot would be like this, my right foot would be slightly turned. I mounted my throttle pedal slightly turned. I gave myself a little 3/4 inch heel riser, so when I was full throttle, my foot was flat and not down.
Right.
Or not like this, you know. So to a degree, it's not the same thing, but to me, it kind of is, because you are finding the settings, quote unquote, in a real car that make you feel the most comfortable, so you don't think about anything else. Now, I could drive where, rocks would go down my back and stuff like this, and I'd get hit, like nothing like that bothered me. But I know guys that if they got like a small pebble down their back between their seat when we were racing dirt, it would drive them nuts. That's all they could focus on.
Right.
Like, those kind of things didn't bother me. Right. But, if my gloves were all wadded up on my hand for some weird reason, if they got turned, that would drive me nuts.
Right.
So it is, but it isn't the same thing. So it wraps back into making sure that you're comfortable, so that, like you were saying, you can then start adapting and figuring out better braking points and how you attack the track.
Right. Absolutely. That makes sense, and I think it's a big part of it. I did just make an audio adjustment for anybody who's watching. I see you were a little hot, apparently, so.
Ooh.
When I was thinking about this before the show, and I thought one of the things that maybe veteran sim racers are more guilty of than beginner sim racers is kind of forgetting some of the basics. So when you were, if you have real life experience, or if you had done sim racing with a coach instead of just dove in, that's the difference also. A lot of people get in real life racing and get coaching fairly quickly, versus sim racing coaching is like a new age thought. But I think that a lot of people forget the basics. And, when I'm watching drivers and I can see that they are, early or late consistently on the same corner. And it's like, okay, well, if you go back to the basics of racing, especially road racing, it starts with threshold braking, because that's the safety side of things. They don't want to teach you how to accelerate until they've taught you how to stop. So threshold braking being the first emphasis. And when I look at somebody who's consistently early on a corner, 10 laps in a row, and I think, wow, if they'd gone back to the basics, they would see that they're early, which means they can push their braking zone back 10, 15, 20, 30, 50 feet and hit the apex at the right time and gain time for free, essentially. And I see the opposite as well, where people are just consistently late on the same corner 10 out of 10 times. And I think, gosh, go back to the basics. You're missing the corner every time. It's not just a one-time thing, when it's that consistency thing. And again, to me, those are the basics of racing. It's braking point, turn-in point, apex, roll on the gas, track out. And, those are the 5 main parts of the corner. And you should, if you're taking this seriously, if you're racing and trying to perfect your skills, well, there's no reason we all can't do the 5 points perfectly. Some of us will be faster than others still. But and I think that's something that veteran sim racers, we get very complacent, and we're like, oh, I got this. I know this. I've run 1,000 laps at Daytona. And it's like, yeah, but setup changes, car changes. Was it the same scenario? And are you putting your car where you really think you're putting your car? Maybe you're just doing that and you're like, wow. But I find myself a full car width off of apex consistently at times. And it's like, damn, Cole, watch your replay, tighten up those marks, and that's free time. That's free time that you don't have to work on a setup. You don't have to be an engineer.
Right.
It's free time gained, and the most important time gained. So I think that's one of the things that a lot of us don't do. Just get back to the basics. In mechanics, we do the same thing. If car's not working, you start with the basics. Fuel, spark, air. Without those 3, it's not going to happen. And if you have those all 3, now you can start figuring out what's not working right. Same thing in racing. Just so that's maybe one thing that I think about. I mean, there are a lot. I mean, I can kind of expand on versions of that same thing, but yeah.
Well, Empty Box did a video about practice, right? And I've seen mention about practice, 1,000 laps, all this kind of stuff. The difference in that is, if you watch the video by Empty Box, don't watch it right now. Wait till the end, please, because I appreciate you all being here. But the idea of the quality of practice that, I don't mean to point, the quality of practice that you're doing is more important than the amount of laps that you're turning. So if you went out and ran 1,000 laps, but you're not hitting apexes and breaking points, like those thousands of laps don't do you any good.
Right.
So what you have to do is, when I ran the slot car store and when I've helped other people in real life and in sim racing, I noticed the same thing, is that a lot of people understand that they're not getting the speed, but they don't do anything to correct it.
Right. They do the same thing for 1,000 laps.
They do the same thing. Right. It's the definition of insanity, doing the same thing but expecting a different result. If you're blowing a corner, change what you're doing.
Right.
Change it.
Right.
And if you're struggling with a turn and you get to the race and the race is you're just struggling in a corner, slow down and make the turn.
Right.
You're better off slowing down and just making the corner rather than make it fast one lap and off the track or spinning out for 3 laps. You might lose a little time slowing down just a hair to make the turn, but what I often see is people pushing too hard, people pushing too hard or doing practice that's ineffective.
Right.
And sometimes you need a coach that will help. I mean, I've done it before. I think I'm doing something and I think I'm going through there as fast as I can. And somebody's like, if you try this, it's going to work out better.
Right.
So sometimes it does take an outside perspective, but I'm going to say 90 to 95% of it can all be fixed by you. I think, like we were talking about earlier, watching replays of yourself.
Yes.
If you're a car width off of taking the correct line, like you can see that in a replay. You may not be paying attention to it while you're driving, but you can see it in a replay and go, okay, I know where I was at on the track. I need to move over one car.
Right.
I need to change my braking because I'm blowing. But you've got to make practice effective, because all the practice in the world isn't going to do you any good if you're not utilizing it correctly. I mean, that's the purpose of practicing.
I'll give you a great example of something else. You think of real life racing, and a driver goes out on track, doesn't matter if he does 1 lap or 50 laps. When he comes in, it's followed by a debriefing. So if I have 30 minutes to work on my racing skills, I am better served by driving for 20 minutes. And then even if I'm all alone, because I don't have a crew chief, I don't have mechanics, it's just me, I'm a sim racer. But I spend 10 minutes, here's a track map. Oh, you can't see it very well. There's a track map, crudely drawn, right?
Yes, I like that track map, actually. I'm going to use it.
But, in a real life scenario, and you think of it as to save resources, but it's also maximizing time. Driver comes in, and they're going to sit down, the crew chief and the driver, and they're going to talk about turn 1. And they're going to break it down to all the relevant points like I talked about, not just for improving the driving line, but also so that the crew chief can know what to do with the car. They're breaking, was it under braking for turn 1? Was it over or understeer? Was it locking them up? Were you able to turn in, or did the car fight you? And they're going to break down the entire corner for the entire track to see what kind of changes that need to be made. Well, we can do the same thing, whether you're talking about being an engineer, because we're also our own crew chiefs, but it's taking 10 minutes instead of 10 more minutes of driving to watch your replay, to analyze your driving line, to analyze the car and what it's doing. Because even if you're in a fixed setup, being aware of where the car is doing certain effects is going to help you perfect your driving line also. So, again, I feel like 20 minutes of driving followed by 10 minutes of analysis, which I don't do, by the way. So as I sit here preaching, what do I do? I drive for 30 minutes and then I go eat. I don't do 20 minutes. But on this topic, thinking of what I should be doing if I wanted to be great, which I do. So coming off of this, I might be different. But yeah, 20 minutes of driving followed by 10 minutes of analysis, I think is going to make you faster the next time you come back to the track than just doing 30 minutes of driving. And it doesn't matter if you're talking about your first session or after 1,000 laps of practice. If you haven't been doing that all along, it's going to go a long way. Repetitive laps don't do anything unless you're trying something or unless you're trying to repair driving, or you just haven't found the right driving line yet, and at some point you have to wonder why you haven't found the right driving line yet either. So
yeah, I again, and Double Clutch Productions asks, how many laps of practice will you do if you want to be really competitive in a race? And it's a two-part question for me. The first I will say is depends on if I'm developing a setup. If I'm developing a setup, then what I will do is just take whatever baseline, run a decent amount of laps till my lap times stop changing. And then I analyze, am I missing, lines in the track? Have I not gotten myself up to speed? That's another part that's hard with sim racing, is deciding whether it's you or the car. And so I will sit there and I will drive till my lap times don't change anymore. That tells me that I've gotten at least somewhat used to what I'm doing. And then I'll look at the line that I'm taking, and I'll look at somebody else's line, or if that's not available, I'll just pay attention to what I'm doing. And if I think my line is okay, then I will make a couple small adjustments and see if that improves. Like normal stuff would be like brake bias or a diff setting, something like that. And then I go out and run some more. Do I feel any better? If I don't feel any better, then I start actually working on a setup, and I go through all the points in the car that I think will make a difference. And once I make those setup changes, then I will start my actual practicing, because I'm no longer trying to adjust myself or the car. I'm now working on the lines that I need to take, refining my braking points, maybe push the boundaries of certain corners where I might feel like I can get away with things. So the actual practice part of itself, not the part coming up with the setup, but the actual practice part, usually anywhere from a half hour to an hour for me of practice is usually all that I need. Unless I am really struggling with a car, and I always feel like if I can't get it within that amount of time, it's not going to be that much fun for me to drive anyway. So what am I doing?
Right.
You know, so I sit there and like we're doing Daytona practice, and I just feel like I get to that point where we've settled on a car setup. I run an hour practice session. Now, the 24-hour race is a little different because we have different conditions. So I might practice a half an hour to an hour in different conditions.
Right.
Just to understand the difference and changes that I can expect. And then I try to run, if I can, within that hour of practice, I try to run again in practice. Or I'm sorry, with traffic. So I know what happens when arrow isn't on the nose. You know, how much more speed am I going to carry into a corner, that kind of thing. But, you know, it's around that. I'm not going to say it's a hard-nosed 60 minutes. It may be 90, but it's somewhere in that neighborhood.
Right. Yeah. Any other
you
tips?
got another donation.
I was just going to do that, but I have my graphic on the wrong one. There we go. Go back to the news channel. Thank you very much, Rachel.
Yes, it's very nice. Thank you.
It does help being a data analyst, though, because there is a lot of processing when done right. That's the whole engineering side of sim racing. Any other things that you do? I have another trick that I think is pretty relevant.
Go ahead.
I would call it spying. I talk about watching my replays or watching your own replays. Even better sometimes, or in addition to watching the replays of somebody who is considerably faster and doing it right. Where are they putting their car? I mean, if you really, really process, I mean, the replays are not always one-to-one for everything you see and hear, so to speak. But for the most part, you can find where their braking point is. You can find where their turn-in point is. You can see their angle of attack. You can chart their exact speed to the miles per hour. You can guess their throttle on point. I think that's one of the harder parts to observe when watching someone else's replay. You can kind of hear it, but I'm not 100% convinced that part is one-to-one. Shifting points, I think, are irrelevant. I don't think that works. But the main thing is, you're struggling. All you have to do is watch 10 laps of you. Watch 3 laps of you. And then watch 3 laps of a Mitchie Hoyer or some alien level driver, and just be like, or George Sandman, Well,
that's a perfect example. When I started racing with you guys, I started watching what you guys were doing, and that's how I started picking up speed.
Right.
I'm like, oh, I'm missing this part. Okay, now I need to practice on doing that.
Right.
And doing this. I mean, you have to be an active participant in the learning process.
Yes.
You have to.
You have to take responsibility for that part, even if you're not going to be an engineer and work on the car. As a driver, you have to be willing to do this part, or you're just, you'll miss something. I'm not saying you can't get there. There are people who just haven't.
No.
But it's going to go a long way. There are times in racing where, like, I think alien level drivers go into certain corners, and it's the way they lift the gas and turn the wheel, and they might not even do a brake scrub for like a fast corner, and that the mortals will be out there given just a little bit of brake scrub to control the car going into a fast corner, and they change the balance of the car, and they make it a front-loaded car versus the aliens who did the throttle flick keep it as a neutral or rear-balanced car and are able to fly through some corner. I think of like Silverstone, some of the really fast turns there. And it's like, I think there are times that if you are one of those mortals and you're scrubbing the brake and wondering why you fight understeer on this fast corner and drive off the track, and it's like, well, it might have been that brake that you touched. And you go watch that alien and you never see those brake lights flicker. And it's like, well, you just learned a lot, and that's just a really easy example of watching a fast person, driving line. When are those brake lights coming on? When are they turning off? You don't know how hard they're pressing the pedal, but you can tell where their entry speed and their
But it gives you an idea to start. Right. And all this is not the same. Not everybody has the same driving style, and we're not saying, at least I'm not saying drive like somebody else, but it gives you a basis of comparison. It gives you an idea, like, and maybe you're just not comfortable with doing the thing that they're doing.
Right.
And that's fine, but you'll have to learn to adapt and find a different way of getting around the corner. So yeah, I going back to the original topic idea here, for me, it's getting to know your equipment, getting to know the sim, and being an active participant in the learning process while you're driving.
Yep. So, all right. Well, those are kind of my thoughts. I mean, I think I went through my big top 3 there. Cranky Pants was asking about our intro. Are you talking the intro to this particular show? No, that's generic, uncopyrighted music that needs to be replaced. Billy has much more talent than our intro music.
Ouch, that's not nice. Somebody made that.
Oh, yeah, but it's so blatantly like one of those sound mixing program type music.
It's elevator music. Doom, 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 doom.
It works for now. That's going to be changed, so don't get too attached to that music, people. We're going to change that out. The whole intro, well, shoot, we still have the Sim Tunnel graphic. There are a few things we're a little behind on with this show, but we didn't want to hold back the conversation any, that's for sure. Any other questions? You might not have heard Brandon much.
Yeah, if you got any other questions, throw them in.
He has been here. He actually has been putting some questions into our Discord channel for us. He is here overwatching the show, but not on the audio take today. Brian Ostrike, I wonder how you're driving the Radical and listening to the show at the same time, how that went for you. I see you're typing again, so I don't know if that's good or bad. But that's all I've got today. How about you, Billy?
Yeah, I'm fresh out of topics and idea. Well, okay, that's not true. I mean, I could find things to talk about, but whether we want me to go on aimlessly is probably not more so than I do is probably not warranted.
What about this weekend? Any big plans for the weekend?
Not that I can think of. I will probably, unrelated to sim racing, I'm probably tearing apart my fire pit and redoing all the gas fittings and stuff in that.
That sounds fun.
Not really. The old one, the original people that put it in didn't do a great job. So there's some issues that I have to correct, and I'm just going to put a whole new ring. Because where I'm at, we run on propane.
Uh-huh.
So I'm going to put a whole new ring, and I got to dig out all the rock and stuff that they put in there. So,
well, it'll be fun in spring when you get to enjoy it, right?
I go out there now. I mean, I freaking turned the fire pit on. I'll be out there. Last night I barbecued. You ever have one of those meals that you just sit there and you made it, and the next day you're thinking about how good it was?
Oh,
like that was our meal last night. So last night, it was like 35, 40 degrees Fahrenheit or whatever it is, and I was barbecuing outside. I had the fire pit going. It's fantastic.
See, that's why I'm getting fat. It's yesterday's meal was so good that I'm like, I can't eat today unless I can top that. And so then I do, and that's the end result right there.
So that's all from me. That's all I got. Brother, I'll do some more driving. I actually want to do a multiplayer race. I haven't done one in a while. But anyway, yeah, that's all I got.
I need to get some racing under my belt. I got some more. We got more Daytona practice. I'm actually tomorrow going to be at Base 51 down in Hawthorne area of Los Angeles with John Hill. John Hill's in the chat. He'll be with me. We're going to be at Base 51, a.k.a. CXE Simulations Sim Center. We're doing a little filming work for them, actually doing a educational video for drivers, so to speak. So I'll be down there doing that, which is going to be fun, but too bad because I'll be missing the team practice tomorrow, but I'll have to set something up for the evening. But yeah, that's going to do it for this one. Happy Friday. Hope you all get out there, do some racing, have a good time.
Yep. Thanks for hanging out, everybody.
And that's going to do it for this one. This is the Simpit. I'm Shaun Cole, and I'll see you on the track.
Bye.